The night had already settled deep over the farm when twin beams of light appeared at the far edge of our gravel driveway, slicing through the dark like drawn steel. Then another pair flared a light behind it, and then a third. 3 matte black trucks rolled forward in deliberate formation, crawling toward the house with engines humming low and controlled. Not loud enough to wake half the county, but loud enough to make a statement. The vibration carried across the open fields like something alive, something meant to be felt in your ribs. I stood on the porch and watched as doors opened in slow sequence. Shadows spilled out and took shape beneath the yard light. Large men, thick necks, broad shoulders, built like linebackers who had traded stadium lights for leather vests and heavy boots. Tattoos climbed their arms and throats, ink glinting when it caught the porch glow. One of them stepped ahead of the others and cupped his hands around his mouth. "Time's up, old man," he shouted. "HOA says you're finished here." Inside the farmhouse, Grandpa didn't react the way I expected. He didn't stiffen, didn't curse, didn't even glance toward the door. He continued doing exactly what he'd been doing, methodically cleaning his old M1 Garand at the kitchen table. The metal gleamed under the hanging light. His hands were steady, precise, every movement practiced and unhurried. After a long second, he gave a quiet snort. "Gangsters," he muttered. "That's cute." The way he said it, flat, almost amused, sent a cold line straight down my spine. Before I could speak, he rose from his chair, slow but sure. He shrugged into his faded Marine Corps jacket, the fabric still carrying that faint scent of oil and smoke that never quite left it. Then he leaned close enough that I could hear his breath. "Stay behind me, son," he said softly. "Let's remind them what real homeowner defense looks like." That was the night Silver Oaks HOA believed they were sending hired muscle to intimidate a stubborn old farmer. What they failed to understand was this. They had just declared war on a man who had survived a real one, and who had spent the decade since defending the soil with his own hands. Before I go any further, drop a comment with your location and local time. And don't forget to subscribe, because what happened after this will make you believe in karma all over again. For most of my life, Whitaker Farm looked like something pulled straight from a postcard. 120 acres of rolling green hills. Barns painted a deep rust red, weathered but strong. A pond that caught the sunrise like polished glass. My grandfather, Frank Whitaker, had worked this land since he was 16 years old. He left only once, to fight in Korea. When he returned, he transformed raw wilderness into something alive, something rooted. He used to say, "The soil remembers who treats it right." I always believed him. When my father passed, I left behind 20 years of fluorescent lights and office chairs and came home to help Grandpa. My hands weren't ready for splinters and calluses, but the work felt honest. Setting fence posts beside him, feeding cattle at first light, breathing in wet hay instead of exhaust fumes. For a while, balance returned to my life. Then Silver Oaks arrived. Across the ridge, construction exploded almost overnight. Silver Oaks Estates, gated, manicured, symmetrical, rows of pastel mansions, imported trees planted in perfect lines, decorative fountains spraying recycled elegance into the air. It was governed by the Silver Oaks Homeowners Association, a group that adored words like order, appearance, and community harmony. Grandpa had his own term for it, plastic paradise. At first, they were friendly. Barbecues, wine tastings, smiles and waves from tinted SUVs as they passed our fence. That warmth didn't last long. About a week after their new president, Martha Whitcomb, took control, the first letter appeared. "Dear Mr. Whitaker," it began, "we've noticed your barn sits uncomfortably close to our new walking trail." Grandpa laughed so hard coffee nearly left his nose. "That barn's been there since Eisenhower," he said. "Their trail's still in diapers." I responded politely but firmly. 2 weeks later, another letter arrived. Then another. Complaints about the rooster, the fencing, our irrigation runoff. Each note is signed in neat, looping script. Martha Whitcomb, HOA president. Martha looked exactly like you'd expect. Pastel blazers, pearl necklace, a small designer dog tucked under one arm. She'd made her fortune flipping properties and carried herself like she believed she could civilize anything, including the countryside. Her smile was permanent, the kind that suggests ownership of the air around you. One afternoon, she drove up our gravel drive in a white Lexus, tires crunching like distant gunfire. I was repairing the gate when she stepped out, clipboard ready. "We need to discuss your land boundaries," she said sweetly. Grandpa came off the porch, wiping grease from his hands. "Do we?" he asked evenly. She outlined their plan to extend a walking path deeper into what she described as shared natural space. Grandpa let her finish. "You mean my pasture?" he replied. She mentioned vague easement language and unclear historical maps. Grandpa leaned on the fence and held her gaze. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "I fought a war for this country. I didn't come home to surrender an inch of it." Her smile vanished. After that, things changed. Spray-painted markers appeared in the grass overnight. Wooden stakes were hammered near our property line. A fake construction notice materialized at our gate. The county clerk confirmed no permits had been filed. "They're bluffing," Grandpa said. But bluffing gets sloppy. Then the harassment escalated. Old tires dumped near our driveway. A drone hovering above the barn each evening. Our mailbox ripped clean out of the ground. A note pinned to it. "Call now before it gets worse." I was scared. Grandpa wasn't. He began preparing quietly. New locks, motion lights, cameras tucked beneath the eaves. A sign planted firmly by the drive. Private property. Trespassers will leave in worse condition than they arrived. When Martha returned, this time with two consultants, one covered in knuckle tattoos and the other openly carrying a sidearm, Grandpa barely looked up. "You're about to learn something," he said, "about taking action on another man's land." That night, he pulled a wooden chest from beneath his bed. Inside were medals, folded maps, and a weathered notebook labeled Defensive Perimeter Protocol. "You think they'll come?" I asked. He met my eyes. "They already have," he said. "They're just waiting for dark." Thunder rolled over the hills that evening, and in that moment, I realized something unsettling. This wasn't anger. This was preparation.